Hello everybody, welcome to my home in Newark, and I'm here with Pooh Bear, and we're going to read to you another story from Winnie the Pooh, and this is Chapter 9, in which Pooh is entirely surrounded by water. Wow, wonder what's going to happen. Piglet is entirely surrounded by water, and what's going to happen to poor Piglet? Let's find out. It rained and it rained and it rained. Piglet told himself that he never in his life, and he was goodness knows how old, 3 was it, or 4, never had he seen so much rain. Days and days and days. If only, he thought as he looked out the window, I had been in Pooh's house, or Christopher Robin's house, or Rabbit's house when it began to rain, then I should have had company all this time, instead of being here all alone and with nothing to do except wonder, when will it stop? And he imagined himself with Pooh saying, "Did you ever see so much rain, Pooh?" And Pooh saying, "Isn't it awful, Piglet?" And Piglet saying, "I wonder how it is over at Christopher Robin's way." And Pooh saying, "I should think poor old Rabbit is about flooded out by this time." It would have been jolly to talk like that, and really, it wasn't so much good having anything exciting like floods if you couldn't share them with anybody. For it was rather exciting. The little dry ditches in which Piglet had nosed about so often had become streams, and the little streams across which had splashed were rivers, and the rivers between whose banks they had played so happily had sprawled out in their own bed, and was taking up so much room everywhere that Piglet was beginning to wonder whether it would be coming into his bed soon. "It's a little anxious," he said to himself, "to be a very small animal entirely surrounded by water. Christopher Robin and Pooh could escape by climbing trees, and Kanga could escape by jumping, and Rabbit could escape by burrowing, and Owl could escape by flying, and Eeyore could escape by making loud noise until rescued. And here I am surrounded by water, and I can't do anything. There's Pooh," he thought to himself. "Pooh hasn't much brain, but he never comes to any harm. He does silly things, and they turn out right. There's Owl. Owl hasn't exactly got brain, but he knows things. He would know the right thing to do when surrounded by water. There's Rabbit. He hasn't learned in books, but he can always think of a clever plan. There's Kanga. She isn't clever, but Kanga isn't, but wouldn't be so anxious about Roo that she would do a good thing to do without thinking about it. And then there's Eeyore. And Eeyore is so miserable anyhow that he wouldn't mind about this. And I wonder what Christopher Robin would do." Then suddenly he remembered a story about what Christopher Robin had told him about a man on a desert island who had written something in a bottle and threw it into the sea. And Pooh thought that if he wrote something in a bottle and threw it in the water, perhaps somebody would come and rescue him. What do you think? Will that happen? Let's find out. He left the window and began to search his house, all of it that wasn't underwater, and at last he found a pencil, a small piece of dry paper, and a bottle with a cork in it. And he wrote on one side of the paper, "Help! Piglet! Me!" And on the other side, "It's me, Piglet! Help! Help!" And there's Piglet in his house, surrounded by water. Then he put the paper in the bottle and he corked up the bottle as tightly as he could, and he leant out of his window as far as he could lean without falling in, and he threw the bottle as far as he could. Splash! And in a little while it bobbled up again on the water, and he watched it floating away in the distance until his eyes ached with looking, and sometimes he thought it was the bottle, and sometimes he thought it was just a ripple on the water, which he was following, and then suddenly he knew that he would never see it again, and that he had done all he could do to save himself. And there's Piglet, throwing the bottle out the water. Now we'll see if anybody gets to see it. So now he thought, somebody else will have to do something, and I hope they will do it soon, because if they don't, I'll have to swim, which I can't, so I hope they do it soon. And then he gave a long sigh. I wish Pooh were here. It's so much friendlier with two. So when the rain began, Pooh was asleep. It rained, and it rained, and it rained, and he slept, and he slept, and he slept. It had been a tiring day. You remember how he discovered the North Pole? Well, he was so proud of that he asked Christopher Robin if there were any other poles such as a bear of little brain might discover. There's a South Pole, said Christopher Robin, and I expect there's an East Pole and a West Pole, though people don't like talking about them. True, I never heard of an East Pole or a West Pole. Pooh was very excited when he heard about this. He suggested that they should have an expedition to discover the East Pole, but Christopher Robin had thought of something else to do with Kanga, so Pooh went to discover the East Pole by himself. Whether he discovered it or not, I forgot. But he was so tired when he came home that in the very middle of his supper, after eating for a little more than a half an hour, he fell fast asleep in his chair, and he slept, and he slept, and he slept. Then suddenly he was dreaming. He was at the East Pole, and it was a very cold pole with the coldest sort of snow and ice all over it. He had found a beehive to sleep in, but there wasn't room for his legs, so he had left them outside. And wild woozlies, such as inhabit the East Pole, came and nibbled all the fur off his legs to make nests for their young. And the more they nibbled, the colder his legs got, until suddenly he woke up with an "Out!" And there he was, sitting in his chair with his feet in water, and water all around him. He splashed to his door and looked out. "This is serious," said Pooh. "I must have an escape." So he took his largest pot of honey and escaped with it to a broad branch of the tree well above the water, and he climbed down again and escaped with another pot. And when the whole escape was finished, there was Pooh sitting on his branch, dangling his legs, and there beside him were 10 pots of honey. And here you see Pooh on the branch with his 10 pots of honey, while the rain's still coming down. 2 days later, there was Pooh sitting on his branch, dangling his legs, and there beside him were 4 pots of honey. I wonder what happened to the other 6. Did you get hungry, Pooh Bear? 3 days later, there was Pooh sitting on his branch, dangling the legs, and there beside him was only 1 pot of honey. 4 days later, there was Pooh, and it was the morning of the 4th day that Piglet's bottle came floating past them, and with one loud cry of "Honey!" Pooh plunged into the water, seized the bottle, and struggled back to his tree again. Pooh, did you think that was honey in that bottle? Bother, said Pooh as he opened up. All that wet for nothing. What's that paper doing? He took it out and looked at it. It's a message, he said to himself. That's what it is. And that letter P. And so that is. And so that a P means Pooh. So it's a very important message to me. And I can't read it. I must find Christopher Robin or Owl or Piglet, one of those clever readers who can read things, and they will tell me what the message means. Only I can't swim. Bother. Then he had an idea, and I think for a bear, a very little brain, it was a good idea. And so he said to himself, if a bottle can float, then a jar can float. And if a jar floats, I can sit on top of it. And if it's a big jar, so he took his biggest jar and looked it up and corked it up. All boats have a name, he said, so I shall call mine the Floating Bear. And with these words, he dropped his boat into the water and jumped after it. And here's Pooh climbing onto the jar. That's his boat. Pretty smart idea for a bear of little brain. Where you going, little Pooh Bear? For a little while, Pooh and the floating bear was uncertain as to which one of them was meant to be on top. So after one or two different positions, they settled down with the floating bear underneath and Pooh triumphantly astride it, paddling vigorously with his feet. And there's Pooh, on top of the bottle, which is his boat. Christopher Robin lived at the very top of the forest. It rained and it rained and it rained, but the water hadn't come up to his house. And there's Christopher Robin. It was rather jolly to look down into the valleys and see the water all around him, but it rained so hard that he stayed indoors most of the time and he thought about things. Every morning he went out with his umbrella and put a stick in a place where the water came up. And the next morning he went out and he couldn't see the stick anymore. So he put another stick in a place where the water came to, and he walked home again. And each morning had a shorter way to walk than he had the morning before. One morning of the 5th day, he saw the water all around him. And he knew for the first time in his life that he was on a real island, which was very exciting. It was the morning that Owl came flying over the water to say, "How do you do?" to his friend Christopher Robin. "I say, Owl, isn't this fun? I'm on an island." "The atmospheric conditions have been very unfortunate lately," said Owl. "The what?" "It's been raining," explained Owl. "Yes," said Christopher Robin, "it has. The flood level has reached an unprecedented height." "The who?" "There's a lot of water about," said Owl. "Yes," said Christopher Robin, "there is. However, the prospects are rapidly becoming more favorable at this moment." "Have you seen Pooh?" "No, at any moment." "I hope he's all right," said Christopher Robin. "I've been wondering about him. I expect Piglet's with him. Do you think they're all right, Owl?" "I expect so. You see, at any moment." "Do go and see, Owl, because Pooh hasn't got very much brain. You might do something silly. I do love him so, Owl. Do you see, Owl?" "That's all right," said Owl. "I'll go. Back directly." And off he flew. And in a little while he was back again. Pooh isn't there. Not there? Has been there. He's been sitting on a branch of his tree outside his house with 9 pots of honey. But he isn't there now. Oh, Pooh, cried Christopher Robin, where are you? And here we see the picture of Pooh. I'm not sure where Pooh is. Hopefully Owl and Christopher Robin will find him. Here I am, said a growly voice behind him. Pooh! They rushed into each other's arms. How did you get here, Pooh? Asked Christopher Robin when he was ready to talk again. On my boat, he said proudly. I had a very important message sent to me in a bottle. Owing to having got some water in my eyes, I couldn't read it, so I brought it to you on my boat. Is that really the reason he couldn't read the message? Because he had some water in his eyes? With these proud words, he gave Christopher Robin the message. It's from Piglet, cried Christopher Robin when he read it. Isn't there anything about Pooh in it? Asked Pooh, looking over his shoulder. Christopher Robin read the message out loud. Oh, those peas, Piglet. I thought they were Pooh's. We must rescue him at once. I thought he was with you, Pooh. Owl, could you rescue him on your back? I don't think so, said Owl after grave thought. It is doubtful if the necessary dorsal muscles. Then would you fly to him at once and say that rescue is coming? And Pooh and I will think of a rescue and come as quickly as we can. Oh, don't talk, Owl. Go on quick. And still thinking of something to say, Owl flew off. Now then, Pooh, said Christopher Robin, where's your boat? I ought to say, said Pooh, as they walked down to the shore of the island, that it isn't just an ordinary kind of boat. Sometimes it's a boat, and sometimes it's more of an accident. It all depends. Depends on what? On whether on top of it or underneath it. Oh, well, where is it? There, said Pooh, pointing proudly to the floating bear. Let's get Pooh up there. It wasn't what Christopher Robin expected. The more he looked at it, the more he thought what a brave and clever bear Pooh was. And the more Christopher Robin thought this, the more Pooh looked modestly down his nose and tried to pretend he wasn't. But it's too small for the two of us, said Christopher Robin. 3 with Piglet. That makes it smaller still. Oh, Pooh Bear, what are we to do? And then this bear, Pooh Bear, Winnie the Pooh, FOP, friend of Piglet, RC, Rabbit's companion, PD, Pole Discoverer, EC, and TF, Eeyore's comforter and tail finder. In fact, Pooh himself said something so clever that Christopher Robin could only look at him with his mouth open and eyes staring and wonder if this is really the bear of very little brain whom they have known and loved so long. We might go in your umbrella, said Pooh. We might go in your umbrella. We might go in your umbrella. And there is Christopher Robin and Pooh looking at Christopher Robin's umbrella. Think that'll work? For suddenly Christopher Robin saw that they might. He opened his umbrella and put its point downward in the water. It floated but wobbled. Pooh got in. He was just beginning to say that it was all right now when he found out that it wasn't. So after a short drink, which he didn't really want, he waded back to Christopher Robin. Then they both got in, and it wobbled no longer. I shall call this boat the Brain of Pooh, said Christopher Robin, and the brain of Pooh set sail forthwith in a southwesterly direction, revolving gracefully. You could imagine Piglet's joy when at last the ship came in sight of him. In after years, he liked to think that he had been in very great danger during the terrible flood. But the only danger he really had been in was the last half an hour of imprisonment when Owl, who had just flown up, sat on a branch of his tree to comfort him and told him a very long story about an ant who had once laid a seagull's egg by mistake, and the story went on and on, rather like the sentence, until Piglet, who was listening out of his window without much hope, went to sleep quietly, and naturally slipping slowly out the window towards the water until he was only hanging on by his toes, at which moment, luckily, a suddenly squawk from Owl, which was really part of the story, being what his aunt said, woke Piglet up and gave him time to jerk himself back into safety and say, "How interesting! And did she?" And there you see Owl on the branch telling the story to Piglet, which put Piglet to sleep and almost made him fall in the water. You can imagine Piglet's joy when he saw the good ship, the brain of Pooh, Captain C. Robin, First Mate P. Bear, coming over the sea to rescue him. Christopher Robin and Pooh again. And this is really the end of the story. And I'm very tired after that last sentence. I think I shall stop here. And here you go. It's a picture of Christopher Robin and Pooh Bear on the umbrella. And as I said, that's the end of the chapter. And until next time, when we read chapter 10, I hope you all have a great week. Bye, everybody.